Welcome, everybody. My name is Tom Steen. I will be your host today for today's webinar presentation on making mental health a priority for Connecticut agriculture. I am a consultant that was asked by the Yukon College of Health and Nature Services, Agriculture Extension Program. I'm pleased to help and support. I'm a master trainer in several mental health promotion and suicide prevention trainings. And so I am pleased to be here to support and present to you a really excellent panel of people who will share some of their insights with a focus on mental health and stressors that our farming community is finding, and they have their own kind of unique stories. Their presentations will be about 10 minutes each, at which time we will then open for Q&A, and hopefully by the end of the hour, we'll present some resources for you and certainly send you on your way to the rest of your evening. Who we have today is Jim Fitzpatrick. Jim is a vendor for the farming community here in Connecticut. He works for the Arthur Carroll Insurance Agency. He has some unique perspective. Our second presenter today will be Keith Bishop. He's the CEO, president, and winemaker for Bishop's Orchards there in Guilford, Connecticut. And again, he has also some very interesting perspective when it relates to our topic tonight. And last is Patricia Graham, or better known as Patty, who is a licensed clinical social worker with Hartford Healthcare, the Institute of Living, and she'll be our mental health professional. And she too has a background in farming as a young lady growing up on a horse farm. So I think we have some great presenters, and so with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jim first. Jim Fitzpatrick. We'll let and by the way, before we do that, my apologies. Let's always recognize the funders. And as you can see on the slide today, the USDA is working in the background supporting this presentation, as well as the Northeast Extension Risk Management Education Program. So we do want to recognize our funders. So Jim, the full floor is now yours.
Well, thank you, Tom. So my name is Jim Fitzpatrick. I'm a crop insurance agent, like Tom said, for an agency that we cover all in New England and New York. So we're covering a big section of ground, talk to a lot of people, meet with a lot of people every year. But, and it's in an industry where, at some point you're going to see people at their worst, under the most stress. They have a weather-related event that causes them to lose their crop and, potentially their income for a year. So dealing with that has its own set of circumstances. No one what to say, no one what not to say, really, to help them out. We found the best way to address some of these stresses early on is when you sign somebody out. You go through a loss process so they know what to expect, know what to have prepared to make their whole life easier. Because you don't know what else is going on through their life. Then they could have other stresses. For the dairy industry, for example, they've been through years of low milk prices, and then to put on the added stress of losing their crop, there's a lot to it. In my prior position, I had my own little seed dealership, and being on farms with that as well, you get to know people. As a vendor, ultimately people buy from people, and they want to buy from somebody they can build a relationship with and trust. That's what it is. So you want to be there for people. And in some cases, they open up to you. This is so important for vendors throughout agriculture, throughout anything. They want to open up to you sometimes because they trust you. You become friends. And, so I've had my experience where you're on a farm visit. It was getting some paperwork done. And all of a sudden, farmer starts opening up, starts talking to you, you know, and come to find out he's having some suicide thoughts. And, as a person standing there that's never heard that, it can get scary. So you talk to him. You don't want to leave him. You ask him how things are, and you know you stay with him. I was there a lot longer that night than I expected to be, and helped him out and made sure I called him the next morning, talked to him. At that point, I really didn't know what to do. It was scary for me, but come to find out, after talking to him, he could seek help, and he got help, and it's been a few years now, and he's doing extremely well, and he's a lot better off mentally. But it was for a time with you wouldn't think anything was wrong, but he had some personal issues. But it's one of those things where I almost feel like the vendors are almost the front line to help seek out help for some of these people in a lot of cases know them better than other people do. So it's a scary thing the first time you go through it, but something like an experience like that. But if you help one person, it's worth it. So I'm going to pass the floor to someone else.
Great. And I must say, Jim, that sometimes it's your best gut feeling to what to do when you're in a situation like that. And it sounds like you did all the right things, staying with somebody, offering hope, and helping, pointing them in the right direction. Tell us, Jim, how many farms do you actually connect with on a kind of a day by day or week by week basis in your work?
So I would say yearly hundreds.
Hundreds. Wow.
Hundreds.
Wow.
And it's over a large area, and it's all different industries. So you see it, from potatoes to cranberries to corn, soybeans. There's a wide variety of crops and a wide variety of interests, a wide variety of personalities as well. So that plays a role in it.
Do you feel that maybe depending on what type of farm, whether it's a produce farm, dairy farm, or forestry, do you see any differences between as far as their challenges, or is it pretty much the same orchestra?
Well, they all, depending what crop you are, they all have their own set of challenges, and they all go through their ebbs and flows. I mean, you got some industries that are doing well, and those farmers tend to not be as stressed out as others that maybe other industries are going through a crunch or something, and that's putting a hurt on them.
Is there anything that your particular company or the insurance, I'm making an assumption here, insurance companies that offer support to farmers that are clients for you?
You're starting to see it more now than ever, especially with the last few years, but last 5 years especially. It's starting to become more prevalent.
Okay, great. I think that's really important, and I think we see that throughout not only the farming community but amongst many parts of the community here in Connecticut. So that's really good to hear. So let's move on to our next guest, Keith Bishop, who is with Bishop's office. Orchards. I plan to take a ride down to visit his farms here in a not too distant future. So take it away, Keith. Oh, you got to unmute yourself, Keith.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Tom. All right.
There you go.
It's good to be with everybody here tonight, and for those viewing the recording later on. Our family farm is celebrating its 150th anniversary this year since founding in 1871, and I'm the 5th generation, and I've got 3 of my 4 children that have chosen over the past 12 years to come back into the family business with us, my son being the latest, and 2 years ago, coming back in with us after working on another farm up in northern New Hampshire for 6 years and getting experience there. We're a diverse operation. We have about 300 acres, 2/3 of that in crops, and retail farm market that's open all year round. Our employees load is anywhere from minimum of 100 up to over 200 during our prime season. So managing and handling employees, their mental well-being and the intricacies of HR management is one of the challenges, as well as then on the ownership and the family side of having everything go smoothly. So we are the life and we are their paycheck for what they're expecting. And if for some reason we should fail in our duties as family members and carrying out the business operation successfully, there's a lot of other dominoes that can hit other people and families. We have about 50 people that are full-time and the rest of them are part-time and seasonal that way. As during my introduction, Tom indicated, we've had some significant changes in the past couple of years of our operation. COVID was obviously significant for all of us, and that really threw a monkey wrench into what we did and had to plan for. But the bigger event that occurred just before that was a buy-sell agreement execution between myself and my second cousin and his father. And so we essentially bought out half of the business to transfer to the next generations and move our family operation hopefully on as stewards in the agricultural business here in Connecticut. And that came with decades of planning. We've had buy-sell agreements in our family in between the stockholders. We are an S corporation for ever since it was formed back in the 50s. So that's an important consideration to minimize stress, is to plan when you don't have stress for what the transitions will look like and to document what it is you want, how you want to take and handle that, and have legal advice as a part of that. But make a flow chart yourself of what is it you want to take and do, what family members are potentially interested, how do you cultivate them to get the experiences required to be an owner, experiences required to be a manager, what is needed in your business in order to carry it forth successfully. So that was a big significant change with us, and we've got a buyout program that is extended over time to minimize stress and the financial implications of buying out other family members to continue to fund our operation successfully. There's some quick tips I'd like to offer, and I could use up more than 10 minutes here, but I'll try to make sure that Tom give me a couple minute more warning here.
You're doing well.
You want to have clear communication guidelines between family members and your managers that are involved in your operation. And that takes work to make that happen. It's got to be a very conscientious decision. One of our rules that we put together with a consultant by the name of Don several decades ago when we first started with him was no surprises. So if you take that to heart, then you want to make sure that you're open about things that are coming up for decision making on the farm with your families, so you don't have a blow up over somebody making a decision that may be the right one, but you haven't shared that with other people, and so then you're into a unstable relationship and discussion that takes away from other important things that are going on in your operation. Regular family meetings is another one. We have been charter members of the University of New Haven Center for Family Business since it was formed about 27 years ago. That organization, unfortunately, has folded with COVID, and they're trying to figure out how to bring that back. But the basic premise, the Center for Family Business brought together between 40 and 60 family-run businesses that were all sorts of operations, from insurance, manufacturing, a number of agricultural operations, retail, most anything at all that the family could be involved with, members represented that. But the common theme to family businesses, you've got family members involved You've got family capital involved. You've got compensation for family members, how that's handled, and having outside people that you can talk to that are outside of your immediate circle, that aren't necessarily paid advisors but have experience in the real world, can most certainly help you get a feeling for opportunities and what you want to learn from somebody else and share and ask questions. One of the things that we've done for over 30 years is that every Friday morning we have a family breakfast meeting of the key family members. And that started with my father and his first cousin and my second cousin and myself. And now that is continuing on with myself and my daughters. Definitely it is a struggle, especially as my daughters, between them, have children that are school age. And so trying to do breakfast meetings, which we found to be the most effective time that doesn't get interrupted by other things in the farm, is much more of a challenging. We've got toddlers and kids getting off to school and, let alone throwing in COVID itself. But regular family meetings and having a set time, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, or a minimum monthly, that you then all make a commitment for an agreement to work together and sit down so you can go through things without the pressure of bringing something up suddenly that you need to bring up, but trying to find the right time and the place and away from employees or whatever the private nature of conversations needs to be. Some of you may be familiar with the three-circle model of family, owners, and business. And I don't have an image to pull up here for you, but I most certainly can make some materials available to the host, and they can distribute it to those that are on and add it to the presentation. Basically, three overlapping circles. And in the middle, the overlapping is somebody who is an owner, a manager, and a family member. And then there are people who fall into the circle that are just managers or employees. There are ones who are just owners. And then there are ones who are on the other side of it, just family members. And each of those has their own relationship with the business. And it is important to know the functionality of each one of the relationships between those and what roles and responsibilities each one of those has. We have used outside advisors for several decades, and I encourage everybody to seriously consider having paid outside advisors that you use on some basis. On a regular basis is most helpful to have continuity. Those folks who have helped us through family discussions, having a person in the room that then can help to mediate, moderate family discussions, help to bring out the elephant that is on the table, but nobody's going to talk about it or going to be the first one to bring it up. Those are important things that you do get on the table and you do discuss those. So having an outside advisory group or assistance with family business counselors is something I highly recommend that you follow up, and there will be some resources that are part of the materials at the end that can help guide you that way. One of the last things I'll leave you with, this is a book that I read last year, and it's a helpful one, especially when you're under stress, but also to develop relationships with other people in your life. The book is called The Power of TED, and is not about TED Talks, but The Power of TED is written by David Emerald, and that is TED stands for the Empowerment Dynamic. And it is a easy read. It's available on audiobooks. It's like a 3-hour listen on audiobooks. It's goes through one of the key components is the dreaded victim triangle. And I pull up my other screen here to get it right.
Keith, perhaps maybe you could put that title and the author's name in the chat box.
Sure. Yep.
After your
Yeah, I'll do that
presentation. That'd be great.
when I get I can type. So, yep. So the drama dreaded triangle. There's a victim, a villain, and a rescuer, and how those pieces interact and who is playing what role at what time is an important component to understand, and then try and make sure you're putting yourself in the right role and that you're not turning into a victim or a villain, and nor a rescuer. And so that book is an important one that can help you understand that particular thematic. So with that, I'll finish my formal comments and let it be for Q&A when appropriate.
Okay, well, great, Keith. What a great story. I too have a memory back, and I think I shared this with you on our call. Back when I was in college, my roommate was a dairy farmer. And I remember sitting around the table, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and listening to conversations around the challenges of operating the farm with mom and dad, and the sisters and brothers. And so I can relate to some of the things that you were sharing today. And then really that was how they reduced the stress, because everything was planned around those meals to best operate the farm and keep things moving. And then they told me how to run a tractor, and then they say, "See that field of alfalfa? Well, we'll come and get you later when it's lunchtime." And off I went and cut alfalfa. So anyway, so that was my story. So thanks, Keith. What a great thing, and I certainly look forward to visiting your operations here later this summer. So and we'll ask for questions here in a few minutes. But our next presenter is the famous Patty Graham. Famous because I've known Patty for a while. And great presenter, also a suicide prevention trainer and mental health promotion volunteer and expert, and I think she has some unique concepts and thoughts that she could share with us today. So turn it over to you, Patty.
Tom. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I hope everyone's staying cool now that ridiculous heat is out of the way. So I'm going to really be talking about the mental health component, but I just want to recognize the other speakers, Jim and Keith, for their perspectives, because I'm certainly learning a lot. I grew up on a horse farm. By no means is that the agriculture business, but my family is in the nursery business, and I have a few family members who are in lots of different areas of the agricultural business. So I actually did talk with a lot of them before this evening, just to kind of get a sense of what is going on in the agriculture world in terms of mental health. Like, do people talk about it, and how is it impacting them? So I'm going to kind of give a little overview of just some basic things, and then I really hope that I know Tom will facilitate the Q&A, but I really encourage a conversation and discussion. Certainly don't want this to be a me talking at you sort of thing. So mental health impacts everyone, right? We all have physical health. Everybody has mental health, and I think sometimes we challenge that thought based on our families, our experiences, and other people around us. But it's really been this pandemic that we've all been in where we're actually noticing and talking about mental health, I think, in ways that maybe we haven't talked about before. And so I do work with teenagers. I work with families as well. So again, I'm not an expert, but particularly in the agricultural community, at least from the conversations I've had with other community members, they've really talked about there are so many external stressors that you cannot control for, and how challenging that can be. And also, you're working with family. I mean, Keith, you mentioned your family, and while family can be great, they're still your family. And so how do you run a business and also take care of your mental health as well? So at baseline, things are difficult in the farming community, and also taking care of your mental health, and the pandemic only just adds to that. So I often like to make a distinction between a mental health problem versus a mental health disorder or an illness. And so, for example, most people will experience a mental health problem at one point or another in their lives, such as a death. Most people will lose somebody, a pet, a loved one, an old grandma or grandpa, somebody you lose, and grief is a very typical experience that we all experience in our lives. That is typically a mental health problem, but that can, over time, if it's not dealt with or it really impacts you or it goes on for a long period of time, it can eventually affect your everyday functioning, and actually the symptoms can get worse. And that's really where like a mental health problem can become a mental illness or disorder. So I often like to say the distinction is a mental disorder or illness is something that impacts you getting up, going to work, having those engaging relationships that we all experience every day. And it's something that's impacting their lives. So as individuals, we often know when we're not doing well. Like we might recognize that something's off, or even people around us will recognize that something's off and maybe say something, but maybe we're really not at a point where we want to say, oh yeah, something's going on with me. I mean, I know I've known Tom forever and he would probably notice something's up with Patty. But, you know, having that conversation, noticing that something is different within a person and then saying something is a totally different thing. So Jim, you talked about your own story about you're talking with this individual and it just kind of comes up in the conversation and how awkward it can be. Mental health should be part of our everyday conversations, but it's hard because there's so much stigma, and I know when I was told when I was younger, and I don't think I'm that old, but my kids tell me every day I'm really old. But that, you know, mental health, who has mental health, get over it, pull your bootstraps up, go out, like you just need to get through it. And so having those conversations can be really important. But what are some warning signs that people might not be doing well? Well, any change in that individual. And when we're thinking about suicide, there are lots of other warning signs I'll mention later. But there are two things I always like to talk about, which are risk factors and protective factors. So risk factors are things that can just make life a little bit more challenging for people. So maybe risk factors for people might be using substances. It could be isolating from family and friends, maybe a family history of mental health challenges. It can also be just not engaging in the things that they typically used to. And so there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of humiliation that can come with that when there's a change that goes on. There are also protective factors, though. So these are things that can overall help our mental health every day. Those can be being proactive, engaging in your community, feeling connected to family and support, having coping skills and coping with life. Life can be really challenging. Access to mental health care, which actually, as you all were talking, I was curious about, and you know, access to mental health can be really challenging. I can tell you right now, the wait list for providers is unfortunately very long. People are having a hard time finding providers, but oftentimes I hear from community members, I don't even know where to start. Do I just pick up a Yellow Pages, which kids probably don't even know what that is anymore? Like, do I just call a random psychiatrist or psychologist and ask them if they have an opening? Oftentimes you can start with your primary care provider. That can be a great starting point. Oftentimes people have a relationship with their PCP, but at least you're starting the conversation. Other things that can be really helpful, your culture or religious beliefs, your spirituality, self-esteem, and having a sense of purpose. Those are all things that can be protective factors. So when we're thinking about somebody who might be struggling, some of the warning signs that we talk about is they might just come out and start talking about it. Maybe like in your example, Jim, that individual you were talking with just said it. They might write about it. They might have a mental health challenge or a history of it. They could also have some physical illnesses, even a traumatic brain injury. They might also have prolonged stress, and stress that has not gone and been dealt with. Maybe stressful life events, relationship challenges, unemployment, knowing somebody who's died by suicide or a family member who has died by suicide can also be a warning sign as well. And also a history of difficulty in their childhood. So those are all things. And what I often like to say is suicide doesn't happen or mental health doesn't happen. Like you don't just wake up and you're depressed. It often has a lot of different factors that contribute to that. And so what I often like to say when people do start seeking mental health treatment is it took you a little bit to get to where you are. It's going to take a little bit of time to get back to where you want to be. So it takes some effort. And so before I end, I always like to lead with self-care. So self-care is something that is so important. And oftentimes people tell me, Patty, I have no time for self-care. I call BS. Sometimes self-care can be 5 minutes. I used to work with a mom who literally hid in her car for 5 minutes in the driveway until she went into the house. And that's how she took care of her self-care. But it looks different for everybody. So self-care can be intellectual, it can be emotional, environmental, physical, spiritual, financial, community-based, or occupational. It's not sort of like you go on vacation, you get your nails done, that sort of stuff. But it can be, it absolutely can be. But self-care is something that should bring you peace and something that you actually enjoy and like to do. It can be really small, it can be really big, but it's something everybody should do every day to take care of themselves. Everybody drinks water, they eat, they move their bodies every day for their physical health. Same thing that should happen with their mental health.
Great. Thank you, Patty. That was, I like your perspective on protective factors, because that's really the most important thing that we can do when it comes to our mental health and our mental being, and self-care is where it all starts. And so I like just get in the car and drive around. When I was raising my kids, I used to do that to get them to sleep. I don't know whether I could do that anymore or not, but maybe someday when I have grandchildren, we should do that. But anyways, thank you all three. I think that the perspectives were all really excellent. I'd like to open up with questions, but if I may, let me start with a couple, and then if somebody wants to unmute themselves and direct a question to any one of our three panelists, I offer that invitation to you. But the first one, and it really, I'm going to kind of direct this to Keith, if I will. What are the best ways that farmers manage stress? Any suggestions that you might have that other than the obvious, obviously, and it's certainly the family meetings, I think, as you shared earlier, Keith, certainly help. But what maybe are some other ways that farmers manage stress?
No, I'm not the professional in terms of recommendations here. Maybe lean on Patty for some more technical pieces of it. But one pieces of it is I know I can be more wordy than I need to be, so I need to concentrate on being clear with what I am saying out to who I'm conversing with. The other is, what is the message you want to deliver, and is that the way in which you do it, with your body language going along with it. So one little mnemonic that I keep in the back of me is to have a little birdie on my shoulder, and think about that birdie on the shoulder whispering in your ear saying, is that the message you want to deliver? Count to 10 before you say that. Just like sending off an email, before you send an email off, and is the body language or the tone of the digital language in it something it's going to be taking the right way by who you're sending it to. And the same way with who you're face to face with, making sure that you're careful with your body language and your words that you use. So before you jump, then make sure that's appropriate. Also, ask the person, and this gets into what's called active listening, is to ask the person who you just delivered a message to work with you to make sure that they understood what your message was, by asking them to please tell me what you heard me say. And if they don't repeat back exactly or paraphrase to be reasonably accurate, then you can clarify further to make sure that you're on the same wavelength. And that can eliminate a lot of discussions, disagreements, which then can lead to stress over little things blowing up rather than concentrating on things that are really important to your family or farm.
Great. Yeah, I like that, and I certainly think that it's communication is also listening, and so I think that kind of goes hand in hand when managing their stress, and I can see how it certainly can apply in a farm setting. Our other two panelists want to jump in on that.
Yeah, I can't stress enough that listening is probably the most important thing, right? When it comes to anything, you can't hear many things if you're talking, and you can find out more if you're listening, and you can help somebody. Doesn't cost you anything to listen.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Jim. Another question I have that I that I think is interesting, and maybe Patty, you can start with this one, and let's see if our other panelists can jump in. But can farmer stress affect family members?
Any stress can affect any family member. So yeah, I mean, every farm is different, but that stress might be your property. The property might be right, so it's really hard to get away from it and kind of set hours and limits and things like that. But absolutely, stress can affect the family, and one of the things that I would really recommend is setting those limits and boundaries for everyone. Wipe your boots on the way in, wipe them on the way out. It's that sort of old corny saying, but I can nothing like farming, but I have an imaginary button in my car that I hit when I get to the parking lot and then when I leave, because if I carried all the stuff that I carry when I work with kids, there's no way I could bring that home and do my job. And it's really hard with farming because there's also a busy season, there's a non-busy season, and it can be really difficult to go from one extreme to the other. But figuring out what your family does to address that stress, but also again, figure out what you need, what brings you peace. If it's taking space, if it's like, I just need to go watch my TV show for a half hour and then I'll come back out. That communication is a really important thing, because when you don't communicate with your words, you're communicating something else with your body language.
Great, thank you, Patty. Any of our other panelists want to touch on that? And I offer that question only because I have met recently farmers who's and it's usually the lead farmer, and the two that I've spoken to, one was female and the other one's male, so there's no difference here, certainly in sex, but their comments were, and some of them, actually both of them had younger children, that they were concerned that their stress was then making their family stressed, which is why I offered that example and experience that I had, which I thought was a stress reducer, because there was open conversation, communication around the meals. So that's why I posed the question. So thank you for that. And hearing that the others don't want to jump in, I'd like to open up the floor. I see Dr. Rob has joined us today. You want to join in on this, Rob?
Sure. I grew up in the country, actually not on a real farm, but my dad did have an orchard. We had about 300 grapevines and I don't know, 25, 30 fruit trees of different varieties and so on. So I'm a country boy from heart, and I've never enjoyed living in town. I have always want to live out in the country and stuff. So, but I haven't. I certainly can't say I felt the stresses that when your actual family life and your total income, it all depends on factors like weather and what else is going to happen. Is there going to be some kind of pest that comes in and destroys all your property. I grew up in the South and actually picked cotton when I was 7 and 8 years old. And I remember people talking about the boll weevils that would come in and destroy the cotton plants. So I know there's all kinds of stresses that people can feel, and I know that certainly from a suicide prevention point of view, agriculture is one of the main factors that we are concerned about. Tom knows, but others don't know perhaps. I'm the director of Zero Suicide Program in Washington County, Rhode Island. But I was delighted to see this. We're also involved in something called man therapy. And one of our target audiences is the agricultural industry, because typically middle-aged men are the highest numbers of suicides in the nation, and they're also the most resistant to getting into therapy. And this man therapy is a very humorous approach to get the manly man to get rid of some of the stigma about finding out what's going on with his mental health and getting help if he needs it. So we haven't really approached it yet, but agricultural industry is our actually the next one we're going to be approaching to try to get some of the leaders in agriculture in Southern Rhode Island involved in supporting this man therapy posters. And it's just a very humorous approach. If you go to mantherapy.org, you'll see that it's really funny. But it's also been proven quite effective at getting middle-aged men engaged in checking out their mental health and getting help when they need it. So that's about all I can really add to it, but I'm enjoying listening to what you have to say.
Thank you, Rob. And we really do appreciate our friends there from east of the state. Rob and I have worked a lot together here over the past few years. You're certainly a champion there. And I have gone to the website, that man website. It's pretty funny, but it really has a really underlying message that it's okay to get help when you're struggling, for us guys, when we're struggling with our mental health. We really need to bridge that gap, and certainly it's a great way. So then I encourage anybody that's going to be listening today or in the recording to do log on, because it has an interesting approach to men's mental health, which is, I think, very key. Why don't we throw one more question out? We're coming close to the end of our time here.
Tom, before you do that, let
Yes,
me
please.
just throw in, peer support is another
Oh, yes.
important way to connect up and get support that you don't feel like you got to find a therapist and so forth. And so to say that peer support can be in a number of different ways. It may be through nonprofits, your relationship with other people that are there, that are outside your industry, but you're able to have confidants there. We've had a board of advisors rather than a formal board of outside directors. That board of advisors has helped our family to take and grow, follow up, and not in all aspects of management and operation of the family business. But those people who you would then pick and choose to be on your board of advisors are ones you can also have confidence in and say, I can't talk to my wife about this. I can't talk to my son or my daughter about this, or my father. But I'm glad to take and go to somebody else outside the family, because you got their opinion and you would feel more comfortable asking them those types of questions. They also can lead you to water, so to speak, to find additional resources if those are appropriate, and to recommend whether it's therapy or joining other groups that can help out.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Keith. Yes, peer support, I think it's really important. And I got to know Keith through the Connecticut Farm Bureau and Joan Nichols, who's the ED for them. And that organization is a great way to get peer support, and it's a statewide organization. Joan wanted to be with us tonight, but had a conflict in her schedule. So I could certainly encourage you all to reach out to that particular organization, because there are all kinds of support that you get through them, as you provide all the food and all the things that we need as residents of Connecticut, so that we have a really nice life, because food is very important, obviously. So I think we'll take a minute. I'll ask Mackenzie to put back the slide, the second slide with resources. Also, Mackenzie's got to put up a link to an evaluation form that we need to do today. But really, before I go, I want to thank all three of our panelists, Jim, Keith, and Patty, and your perspectives. I think folks who will be viewing this today and in the future will certainly get a lot of positive, I hope, a lot of positive resources and information as we move forward with mental health promotion in our farming community. And as the slide that you can see now will show that that first link, which is the Connecticut Farm Risk Extension Yukon ED list, is an excellent place. It has, I went in there and it would have never fit on one slide, but there for the farming community for sure. That's a very important link, and you should get on it, save it in your browser so that you have resources. The other points on this slide are talk about the Connecticut Crisis Hotline 211, and that's also connected to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And I share that all the time in these kind of presentations because there's always a social worker like Patty on 24/7 at the 211 center. And, you know, you just have a question or a concern or you just need to talk to a third party. They're there, and it's a free service. And so I really encourage you all. I share the LGBTQ plus, the Trevor Project, because especially for our youth, and that this particular population is very subject to mental health, sometimes crisis, and maybe even suicide. So it's really important that information's out there. The next 2 points are the mobile crisis intervention services through DCF, and that point is through the 211 center. But more importantly, this is new. It's the action line from the Department of Mental Health and Addictive Services here in Connecticut for 18 and up. It's a 8100 number. You can get it through the 211 center, crisis line 211, but there's the 800 number there. And again, that always has a social worker, and they have wraparound services that you can access. All you got to do is ask. 911 is obviously important. And if you think somebody's at risk of hurting themselves, it's important that you get emergency services there quickly. And then that crisis text line, I'm getting to be an old guy now, but I do text, and if you text CT at 741-741, you will get a trained person on the other end who can have a conversation with you, which I think is so very important. And then the last is Connecticut State Suicide Advisory Board website, preventsuicidect.org. This is the suicide prevention, postvention, and grief support line. And so I share that with the farming community because there are all kinds of resources there as well. So with that, we're just about done with our hour today. Again, I would like to thank the Yukon Extension folks for offering this webinar or WebEx thing today. I think the information was really solid. Thank our funders from USDA, and I know there is an evaluation that if you could take a minute, and I don't know how we're going to do that, Mackenzie.
Before we do that, Tom, Rebecca Tom's on. She wanted to promote a
oh yes, please.
Before we start that.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Just real quick, I wanted to let people know that currently, as we were talking about before, especially with Keith bringing up, is the peers that are around you. And the Solid Ground program that's based out of Yukon Extension, it works specifically with young and beginning farmers, but we're open to many farmers throughout the state that are even beyond that stage in their career. We have something called farmer circles going on currently, and one of them is based on farmers' mental health. So it's just meeting virtually once a month to just check in, see how things are going, and really create a system where you have support among your peers and maybe even looking into some resources that can help you along the way. So if anyone is interested in that group, you can send me an email. My email is Rebecca, REBECCA .toms, TOMS at UConn.edu, and we can get you into that group to just talk things through and to um, share and be supported by the farming community. So yeah, thanks for the time.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, and I apologize. You weren't
It's
on my
okay.
notes, and you should have been on my notes
It's
today.
okay.
And I see Mackenzie is putting your email in
Yes.
the chat box, so that's really good, so
Mhm.
that folks can connect to you. So thank you all so very, very much for participating in today's program. Appreciate it. Stay well. I put my cell phone in the chat box as well. So if you feel challenged or you want to talk a little bit more about some of the things we spoke of, or you just need a shoulder to lean on, feel free to call me or text me. Even old guys text. Even old guys text message. So as Patty knows. So please do that. I'm always available to support anybody that needs help and is on a journey and just needs somebody to walk with them. So thank you again. And Mackenzie, I don't know how
So
you
now
go.
I'm just gonna put up a very quick poll just so that the folks, you did take a pre event poll and then or pre-evaluation. Now we just want to do a quick post evaluation. So you should be able to see it.
I just in final words in closing, I know there will be many folks from the farm community who will hear via recording this event. I just want to say we very much appreciate what our farmers do in Connecticut, and that you have our support. Don't be afraid to reach out to us. There are a lot of champions that couldn't be here today, but they're out there to want to make sure that we support our farm community, because it's a part of the fabric of our state, and we want to make sure we nurture it, water it, and make it grow to make Connecticut the best place it can be. So thank you so much for attending today. Be well, and we'll see you down the road. Thank you all.